Welcome back to part 2 of this teacher career transition story. So if you haven't listened to part 1, head back to our channel and check that out before listening in because we're kicking off right where we left off. If you've already listened to part 1, then let's dive in. I'm Lisa Harding, ex-EdTech CEO turned certified teacher career coach. It wasn't all that long ago that I was recruiting, interviewing, and hiring teachers for roles in corporate America. Teachers that ended up being some of my all-time best employees. Fast forward through my own career transition, where I left my role as CEO to become a stay-at-home mom, I now work with and empower teachers to transform their lives by turning their once distant career dreams into realities. In this podcast, I give you simple, actionable, step-by-step strategies to help you do the same. If you're a burnt-out teacher or simply need a change and you're looking to create a life you love, you're in the right place, friend. Let's get started. Jackie is asking, how often do you attend meetings? Do you have a mentor or someone else that helped you onboard?
Yes, I do have a mentor. She is she's the main person over the fundraising and funds management department. And I don't know that there's anything she doesn't know how to do in that realm. So she has been great for kind of walking me through the federal and the state grants, and just kind of getting me familiar with what I'll need, what they've done in the past, and how that worked / didn't work. Like if it didn't work in the previous years, like what could we do better? Like she's a great resource for that. As far as how many meetings I attend, it's not a consistent flow of meetings. It kind of fluctuates based on kind of what I'm doing and the time of year, because grants tend to flow in a cycle where the end of the year becomes kind of a dead zone because a lot of foundations, if their fiscal year ends at the end of the year, they will kind of go dark at the end of the year and just be getting ready for the upcoming year. So we get to that point typically about late October. So that's kind of a slow period for us as far as writing them, because they've all, they're due. They're in their process of like going through approvals for their final rounds, and otherwise just kind of preparing for the next year. Our fiscal year ends in the end of June. So we have been having like a lot more discussions right now in July of what does the next year for us look like? How do we want to restructure who's doing what, especially now that we've got these 2 huge new grants, and there's a third that's on the horizon that we're pretty confident we'll also get. These are going to be 3 big new projects that we're going to need a lot of additional support with and kind of reworking who does what. So it kind of goes in cycles as far as how often I meet. I would not say more than once a week. It is very light, and it's, if I call one, or if Jen is the lady above me who does all of everything, who manages that department, if she needs something, it can be kind of an informal meeting, but we do try to hold like formal meetings with the different departments to kind of get their feedback on what they need, at least once a year. And in between that, if we need to, we'll have smaller meetings. Yeah, I see there's a couple other questions too. Is it done independently or is it collaborative? Yes and yes. There's definitely a collaborative nature to it. I'm going to need data. I'm going to need stories. I'm going to need, information from the leaders of different programs so that I know what it is that they're doing. So the actual writing piece tends to be independent, but the whole of it is very collaborative, because I'm not in the clubs. So I don't see the day-to-day with the kids. I see the back end. I see the data. And as we know as teachers, that only tells one part of the story. So we need that other half of, actually more like 70% of the story from the people who are in those programs doing the day-to-day with the students. So it is very collaborative in that nature. But the actual writing piece tends to be more independent. If I need something, I usually go to my mentor. But overall, I kind of just flow with that once I get those pieces from everybody.
So there was
Yeah.
a question that we always get. It's kind of like the salary question. And without directly kind of asking you that, I did paste in the chat what kind of the average US salary is for grant writers. And one thing I always like to tell people is that someone doing a certain job in one part of the country, like Kimberly and kind of more rural Florida, kind of, right, is where you are, Kimberly.
Sometimes I wish we were. We're the weird. Like we're not rural, so we don't get that funding either.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. We don't. We're a suburb. But
so,
yeah.
What a job pays in Florida could be very, very different than what that same exact job pays in New York or in California. But with that said, I think this next question is very interesting. Is what is the stress monetary compensation trade-off in grant writing? And could you touch on, like, you were a Florida teacher. Is it equivalent pay? Did you go up? Did you go down? And then, if the compensation is different, like, are you making up for that in like lack of stress?
Okay, sure. Yeah. I was just reading over the little bit that you put in there too. And yes, that ranged, especially it says the majority of grant writers' salaries range from 52 to 73. That is a very typical range and I fall within that range. If you are employed at a nonprofit, that is a very typical range. A lot of people actually get their start in a nonprofit or other type of program, a nonprofit being the most typical because most grants do fund those, and not so much, a typical business, but not to say that they never do, but it's more common that it's for nonprofits. And then they get their, get experience there. And then they go into either freelance or have their own business. And then from there, the numbers soar. I mean, I've been a part of like a couple of different groups where people that are doing this independently are well into the multiple six figures doing this, and probably less hours than I do it each week. So yeah, that is a very typical range. And when I left teaching, they met where I was. So that was kind of a negotiation on my part and the part of the person who I was networking with. And she kind of was like, this is what she needs. This is, so they met where I was. And then since I have been given the typical, I think it's like a 4% raise each. Well, I'm at my 1 year now. So, but that's pretty typical there, is to do about a 4%. So it definitely met where I needed it to be. As far as stress, guys, I don't even know what that is anymore. And I don't say that like jokingly, like going from the stress of education, especially of social studies in Florida, the level of stress that I have now, the only times that I have felt stress were right at the due dates for those two big grants that we just got, because it was pulling together a lot of things. And literally there's like 2 days since I started that I have felt like, oh my goodness. But whereas, with teaching, it's much more frequent. But yeah, so it has definitely been very good for my stress levels. And the part that I really like about it, I mean, there's nonprofits of all types, but I really wanted something in education, or at least education adjacent, because I still have that passion. I still want to see kids get what they need, and whatever means that is. So out of school, in school, whatever that is, I want to see kids get what they need. And I'm really passionate about what we do, and especially these couple of programs that we will now be, starting. The things that we're going to be able to do with that, I'm so excited about it. So I still have the ability to impact kids, but in a way that has allowed me to kind of have some of the balance that I needed for myself. So yeah, the trade-off for the stress has been yeah, I can't say they could have paid me less because I still need to pay my bills, but it definitely has been a plus.
Um,
um,
and it sounds like,
okay.
you were talking about earlier, there's other people in your department, from the grant reporting people, the grant management people. I mean, you have your boss and everyone that might be under that kind of fundraising umbrella as well. I mean, is it fair to say that even within your own organization, do you see room for kind of growth and advancement down the road?
Yeah, there's different aspects that I could do. Um, I don't know that the like grant reporting would necessarily be of interest to me, but it is another aspect that if I wanted to grow in that way, I could. Um, the program that the big grant that we just got from the state, will be starting a new program in a new school, specifically focusing on getting kids who's they're in a school that's just really, it's struggling, and it's going to be additional support that allows them to be with a certified teacher for extra time, and then after that time they get more enrichment. There was no other programming in that area, so there's opportunity for me even in that area, to kind of help with that programming. My boss was like, if it's something that you want to do to be kind of more back with students again, that's a direction that you can take as well for part of your time. I'm not sure if that's what I'm going to do or not, but there are different ways that you can go and kind of branch out into that. There's also, like I said, fundraising in the community, which can be a lot of fun. I'm not great about just going in like asking people for donations. So that's not necessarily my spot, but I love the networking part of the fundraising. So I've done a bit of that as far as like the grant networks, and I really enjoy that. Just being able to get out there and see what other people are doing in the community is really powerful, to find out like what all is out there. In our area, the resources don't connect to the people very well, and it's kind of sad to see that. But us being able to connect with other nonprofits tend to stack. I've found they tend to work together to get their mission accomplished, and join forces on that. So it's been kind of great to network in that area and see what are others doing. How can we work together to impact the people that are in our community? So yeah, there's definitely different paths or tracks that you could take to
And I
grow.
know,
Or
sorry.
you're fine. Go ahead.
I know when we kind of caught up on what your transition story was, you kind of networked, you got the interview, you told me at the time, like, stressing over your resume and cover letter wasn't, as big of a deal for you. So we might not dive into that with you today, Kimberly, but Jackie had a question that kind of leads us into just like the interview process. Another Jackie on the call today is asking, were they the only interview that you did before being hired? Today's episode is sponsored by the Teacher Career Transition Academy. Are you eager to explore new possibilities but find yourself unsure of where to start? Look no further than our Teacher Career Directory. Available for free, this comprehensive resource features over 200 careers tailored for transitioning teachers. Dive into detailed insights, including average U.S. salary ranges, occupational outlooks, and even a personalized skills and interests inventory. Download now at teachercareertransitionacademy.com/directory. I'll also drop the link in the show notes of this episode. So don't miss out and claim your free directory today at teachercareertransitionacademy.com/directory.
They were, yes. It was kind of just one of those, it fell perfectly. But I will say, and I was talking about this with you before, I do like to keep my resume as updated as possible, just because I think that's something that's easier done, as you go. So looking at what the expectations are of grant writing jobs, when people are posting those, what are their expectations? I have modified my resume to include my position now, and I'm focusing far more on the results of what I've done, versus just the skills that I have. So if people are looking to transition and they don't have that experience, focusing in on the results that you've had in the classroom. If you can give a give a number, because grant writing is like, it's kind of two things. Depends on who's reviewing it. There's the heart and there's the head. And you want to have a mixture of both of those in your grants, and you want to have a mixture of both of those in your resume too. You want to give the numbers for the number driven people, and you want to give the story or the skill based and what you've been doing, the heart of what you've been doing, as well, for those who are driven more by that. So I have added in a lot more of the the tangible things that I can monitor, or not monitor, sorry, measure, so that I can give a more firm example of what I did. So as far as teaching goes, I mean, obviously scores, which we know only tells one part of the story, and it may not be the part you always want to tell, because whether or not you're in a school that's able to achieve those higher scores, maybe you've raised a score, maybe you've been able to help impact engagement, or club attendance, or whatever it is that you may be part of. If you can quantify that in some way, that also helps. But also, you still want to have that balance of what are your skills, what are you getting done, and what is the tangible outcome of that.
Great. And I will just quickly mention, if you're a member of the Academy, don't forget to dive into the third module. That's where the resume workshop is, the template, the bullet points, the coaching, also everything that you need for your cover letter and updating your LinkedIn profile. So make sure you check those resources out. Lydia has a phenomenal question that goes back to like your day-to-day responsibilities. Are you one of the main people deciding which kinds of grants to apply for, or do you help people decide which grants they need, or do they just let you know what they want?
Okay, so yes, I am basically the one making that decision, because I'm going to be taking what the different programs have told me that they need, and then finding grants that are looking to impact in that same way. So I'm doing the research on the grants to see, what do they want to fund? How much is their funding typically? How big is that application? Do we have the time, resources, energy to get that done in the time frame it needs done in? And then, so yeah, I make the decision on what we're going to apply for, but it's based on the information that they have given me, and what they need, what kind of funding, like what number are we looking for? Like, what is it going to take to get this done? So I go with that information and find the grants that I then apply for. Okay. Some organizations do have a whole person that just finds them and, gets the kind of the pieces together, and then somebody else writes it. It depends on the size of the organization. Ours is, we're Hernando County, we're kind of small. So that piece would all fall to me, finding and then going ahead and applying for those.
Okay. So if you've been following along, kind of along the side of my slides tonight, kind of going through the 4 steps of the career transition process, which if you've been on my webinars before, or you work with me coaching through your career transition, I'm really big into process. So it's shift your mindset, identify a new career, create your marketing materials, and then ace the interview and negotiation. And this is, Kimberly, where I kind of want to bring up and go back to you working hybrid, because when you shared your story with me, why don't you go ahead and maybe share about what you negotiated and why that was important for you?
Okay. So working remotely was a priority for me. I had transitioned to the virtual school, found that I really liked that. It works really well for me. And we eventually, my husband and I, want to be able to travel full time. And we need to have jobs that can travel with us. So that was a priority for me as I started to look for positions. Like, I want to be able to keep this schedule, where I have that flexibility and I can get used to that type of work before we're ready to be able to, RV. So when I was speaking with my colleague who had transitioned over to Boys and Girls Club, that was one of the things that, she knew, and I had, reiterated, I do want something that is going to be remote. And so she actually kind of did the negotiation for me a little bit. She went in there and was like, here's what she wants to do. Is this something we would be, open to? They have a few people who work remotely or hybrid, especially those who are doing like the fundraising in the community. It just makes more sense for them to be out doing that. So it wasn't something they were new to, but it wasn't something they necessarily were thinking of for this position. So we kind of struck a deal in the middle where I'm hybrid. I usually go in 2 days a week, and I have found that being a new type of job, being a new position that I was just, really learning, it has been helpful to be there and be able to speak to people, get to know the people. It's a job that I could do from anywhere. The majority of it, I could Zoom meet, I could, drop in here and there. It is something I can do fully remotely, but the couple of days I am there are also beneficial too. So it's not something you'd have to be. And a lot of jobs that I've seen posted for grant writing are fully remote, teams all over the country. They just want you to work certain hours, or be available during a typical work day in their time zone, whatever that may be. But yeah, so the negotiation was kind of this. I wanted to be fully remote. I am hybrid, but I do have the flexibility that, if I am going to be out of town, I can say, hey, you good with me not being in for these couple of days this week? I'll be working from wherever. And that's been totally fine. They know I'm going to get the work done. So, it's okay for them. So, and then I see if I have a LinkedIn. I do have a LinkedIn. Let me pull that up.
I just grabbed it, Kimberly. If you're okay with me sharing it, I will drop it in the chat.
Sure thing.
All right, perfect. Great. So one thing that I kind of like to chime in from the, my perspective on things, and when I work with folks through the academy, when they're negotiating, you can negotiate for much more than your salary. I know people always think that that's, what they want to negotiate for. So I love Kimberly's story. I love how, you can kind of see how you can ask for other things. And when you are the right candidate, they're going to make it work for you. The other point that I like to bring up with this is, so many times the first time I start working with someone, the first thing out of their mouth is, I want to find a remote job. And I'm like, that's great. But saying that you want to find a remote job is like saying you want to work in the state of California. You really have to narrow it down. So once you figure out what you want to go into, then you can start looking for that job in a remote environment. But specifically, maybe my favorite point of all of this is that it is easier, especially in today's job market, to find a job in your local area where you do not have to compete with people from all across the country. If you find a job that says that it's in office locally, your competition has drastically reduced. And when you go for those positions, so many times they will list it as in office because they want someone that's around, but you don't have to go in every single day. They just don't list it that way. Or you can negotiate that. So please don't write off local jobs. Oftentimes they're the best way to get started. As again, like I mentioned, there's less competition. You may know someone locally, or someone knows someone that can help get you in and get your foot in the door. And that's definitely Kimberly's story. And I know you've kind of brushed it off tonight, Kimberly, oh, everything just fell into place for me. But, we hear this, if you've been on these webinars before, time and time again. It's through these networking connections. Every single time that someone really finds something fairly easily, it's because they were networking. And, I think that's a really important part of this, is that has to be part of a successful career transition story. So make sure that you are always doing that as well. I would like to do kind of a last call for questions here. I know we covered a lot tonight. I loved learning about your role, Kimberly, and all the great advice that you shared. We've had some great questions today come in through the chat. So let me just do a final call for questions today. So don't be shy. Please send those in. Lots of thank yous are coming in. Jackie says thank you. I'm sure other folks really appreciate this. Do you have any final advice to a teacher who may be considering a career change in general, or specifically in grant writing, that you want to close with?
I would just say, I know it's kind of overwhelming to think about how to make that transition. I know, just talking to other colleagues that I've worked with in schools, sometimes we feel like, where does teaching overlap with the corporate world, or, what else is out there for me? And there's there are so many options, and there are so many skills that we don't even think about that we use on a day-to-day basis in the classroom that can be so easily transitioned into a corporate world or into nonprofit worlds or whatever that may be. So don't discount anything that you've done. We also tend to be humbled, whether that's by us or just society kind of, keeping us in that place of humility of what we do being for others. And that's very true. But you've also created something in your classrooms. You've gained skills that, teachers are amazing. Like being one, I feel like that's almost like a little egotistical to say, but just the people I've worked around and the stuff that has happened, amazing things happen when teachers put their minds to it. And so don't ever discount the things that you have done and how they might translate over into other positions, because you've done some pretty awesome stuff out there. I have not met any of you, but I know that you have, just by the nature of your profession. Like you have done amazing things. So just think about like, what are those things and what brings you joy in your day, and think about how you can use those skills to transition to something that you may love elsewhere.
All right. Well, wonderful. Thank you so much, Kimberly. We loved having you tonight. I loved having you tonight. The audience definitely did. Lots of insightful information. So thank you so much. Appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, friends, that concludes another inspiring teacher career transition story. Whether you're left feeling certain that this career path is your next calling, or you can cross it off your list, I know you're walking away with valuable insights to take with you. If you want to access even more stories like these, there's an entire library of teacher career transition stories within the Teacher Career Transition Academy under the Career Exploration module of the program. If you're interested in learning more about the Academy, I'll drop a link in the show notes. And don't forget to check out our podcast channel for other great advice from our coaches and experts. Until next time, remember, friends, the journey is just the beginning. Embrace the adventure.